everybody. My name is Greg LaRosa. I'm a member of the Symphonic Committee here at PAS, and I'm joined by Evan Chapman. Evan is a classically trained percussionist and founder of 410 Media, as well as a founding member of the trio Square Peg Round Hole. Thank you so much for being with us, Evan.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So I was wondering if you could just start us off by introducing a little bit about what you do and where this idea of your career sort of stemmed from.
Sure. So I think at this point, my career kind of takes three different sort of umbrellas. There's the 410 Media side of things, which is my film production company with my partner Kevin Eichenberg. There's the trio, which you mentioned, Square Peg Round Hole, which is my rock band meets percussion ensemble meets electronic, whatever you want to call it. And then the other is just kind of everything else that I do kind of just on my own, which, sometimes is concert commissions, still, kind of like recital commissions and that kind of thing, as well as some solo work myself, performing work myself. So within the past few years, commissioned a program of solo drum set and electronics pieces, which I released on an album and used to perform before there was a global pandemic, and hopefully we'll do so again soon. So yeah, those are kind of the three subgenres of my career: are 410, Square Peg, and then my personal composition work.
Wow, that's really incredible. So could you tell us a little bit about how these three sort of fit together, and where maybe they stemmed from, if they stemmed from an original like thread of your percussion playing or your education? How did you arrive here?
Yeah, so I would say they definitely all originated from a similar stem, and they actually do continually thread together. I'd say there's a lot of overlap, particularly with the collaborators that each one of those kind of works within. Like there are a lot of people who 410 has filmed, filmed projects with that I also ended up commissioning for my solo drum set thing, and Square Peg has opened for groups that 410 has filmed, and there's a lot of overlap, and also just kind of aesthetically, the kind of music all kind of lives in a pretty similar world, just because it's our taste in music, and fortunately. My 410 partner Kevin, and then my two bandmates Sean and Carlos, and I all kind of share a pretty similar taste in music, and particularly just kind of contemporary classical music, and just kind of that world. So um, yeah, so both my 410 partner Kevin and I, we grew up together, and we started playing drum set together. That was kind of what we did from the earliest age, was taking drum lessons and playing percussion in school bands and all that kind of stuff. And somewhere along the way, roughly around early mid high school, we both started to get into filmmaking in general. So back then it was very DIY high school, just whatever those videos look like, which are usually like parodies of something we're doing at school, or for me it was like skateboard videos with my friends. And then we both went our separate ways for college, but we each studied music, and Kevin actually did a double degree in music and film, and so I was just music, but was kind of still shooting on the side, just kind of as a hobby, friends recitals and headshots and anything that was with a camera, with my friends. And then we both graduated, and basically just once it came time to actually make a living for ourselves and pay our rent, we just kind of circled back around to each other, and we were like, hey, we're both percussionists, and we both kind of went through this classical degree, and we met a lot of people who are trying to start chamber ensembles and have solo careers and join orchestras, but we also both really love filmmaking, and we like pointing cameras and lenses at things. So is there a way to combine those two things? And so basically just joined forces after graduation, and started the company, which, there was a little bit of a period there where it was like kind of what 410 is now, but sort of not fully committed. Like we were just kind of freelancing, and occasionally would shoot a video of a new piece or something. And then after doing that for a year or two, we were like, okay, let's tack a name on this. Let's like register it as an LLC. Let's do the thing. And that's kind of where, we picked the name, we picked 410 Media. And then from then on, it's basically been, that's the focus of, that's what our day jobs are and our full-time jobs. And so kind of in parallel with that timeline was also me meeting Sean and Carlos at Indiana University, where I went to school, where we all went to school. And I don't know if this was because our professors just saw something in the three of us, but we always ended up getting lumped together in our percussion ensemble groups. It always seemed like we were playing together, and I think the three of us just really enjoyed playing with each other. We're all kind of chamber musicians at heart. I don't think any of us is really like a soloist with a capital S. Like we didn't really want to like have the limelight in that kind of way, and so all three of us found a enjoyment for just playing together. And for that group, it was kind of a gradual gradient from playing a percussion ensemble, playing pieces that were written in the 90s and 2000s, just kind of like classic percussion ensemble repertoire. And then slowly started to get newer and newer with the music that we wanted to play. So, it was first like kind of the classics, the percussion ensemble classics. And then we were like, oh, but there's actually like this guy named David Lang who's writing like rock and roll influenced, like, really high energy percussion ensemble music. Maybe we should play some of that. And then it turned into, actually there are composers here at Indiana who are also writing really cool music. Let's get them to write us music. And then that transitioned to the newest, the freshest form, which is let's just write our own music and let's just write it pretty much on the spot and then play it at a show. And from that point on, once we started playing our own music, the group started to function a lot more just like a rock band. Like we would write music, have band practices, and then play shows. But it was all with vibraphones and desk bells and glockenspiels and like very much percussion ensemble instruments, but writing our own music and just kind of going for it. And so we all moved to Philly together after graduating, and as did Kevin, my 410 partner. We all just kind of used Philadelphia as our kind of launch pad, and we've basically been Square Peg's been playing, and 410 has been working from there ever since. So we all share a studio, and there's a lot of overlap with the personnel and just the projects that we do, and it's all kind of in the same bubble, you would say.
Yeah, it seems like this sort of three-pronged career path that you sort of outlined before came about pretty organically. Like it was organic from your passions, whether that was music and film, or organic from the people that you were, doing these projects with, and then eventually formed these businesses. I'd like to sort of take one quick step back, and you said when you were talking about finding, your partnership with 410 and building this business. You went to school for percussion. Your partner went to school for music and film, but you had to start a business. Can you talk a little bit about like the process of going from being a music student to a business owner, and like some of the things that you had to learn, whether they were, um, for the business itself, like for it to function, or just sort of like artistically, like, are you trained beyond being self-taught in, filmmaking and cinematography and whatnot, editing?
Yeah, it's all great questions. So we, neither of us were business majors. We we definitely didn't start a business knowing what we were doing at all, and honestly, didn't even really start the company as like starting a business. It was more just like we kind of want to get paid for this work that we've been doing. How do we do that? So it wasn't necessarily like like an entrepreneur might start a business because they just have this plan to make money. For us, it was very much like we just like filming things, and it feels like something that we should get paid for because it's a lot of work. And then basically ever since then it's just been figuring out, and this is something that we continue to work on, and it's just ever evolving, is just like figuring out things like contracts and rates and deposits and taxes, and these are all things that obviously come with owning your own company and being self-employed, but none of them are things that we knew anything about going into it, which I think it is also something that musicians go through too. If you want to be a freelancer, if you want to be self-employed in any way as a performing musician or composer, I think unfortunately, and I've seen this change, recently with some resources, but unfortunately, that's not really knowledge that's stressed too much in degree, in undergrad or graduate schools. It's just all about the playing, or it's all about the art, and then you graduate and you're like, oh crap, how do I do my taxes? How do I like? And so yeah, for us, it's definitely, unfortunately, we have each other to kind of, we answer questions together, but pretty much everything with the company has been self-taught. I mean, Kevin did the film degree, but it was a lot more, from what I've heard, it's a lot more kind of theoretical and more like film history and just learning about the history of movies. Whereas I think we've learned a lot of our just nitty gritty technical, like how to light, how to shoot, that kind of stuff, just from trying and trial and error, and just a lot of YouTube tutorials and Googling a lot of things. Um, and so, yeah, the whole process of starting the company has, like you said, been very organic. It's just kind of grown, and we just try to keep up with it as it grows, however we need to. But and also in terms of the skills of just learning how to film and light and record audio and do all this stuff, it's very much just been self-taught and trial and error, and just slowly figuring out what works and what doesn't. And along the way, also just building the network as well and the connections, because obviously, fresh out of school, when no one's seen your work, no one's going to trust you to film their thing. But the more you do, you're dependable and you do good work, then the width of the people that just gets wider and wider, and then eventually, we can actually support ourselves and work enough to be able to pay mortgages and whatever it is we need to do. So yeah.
Sure. And I'm sort of curious, with these all these different endeavors that you have, between your three different careers. Um, do you feel fulfilled as an artist?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's all very satisfying, I think, to me personally, just because I do have both the band and the company. I think, like, you know, out of the group of people who does all of those things, I'm kind of like the one that is literally doing both of them. Like, I play in the band and I also film in the company. And because all of the music is so much just the music that I love, and what Kevin loves and Sean and Carlos love. It's just really satisfying to work on, and I think it took us a while to get to that point. There was, definitely a stretch of several years where we were just doing a lot of projects that we kind of took because we had to support ourselves, and we didn't necessarily connect with the people or the art or whatever, the ethos behind the company or whatever it might be. But gradually over the past few years, we've just been able to stay busy and start to charge enough that we can actually sort of like sift out the things that we don't really want to do, and start to only take the projects that kind of fall in a world that we just personally feel connected to and we emotionally appreciate. And so I think there's always work to be done to just be more satisfied artistically. I think there's always like that project that we wish we could do, or there's always like the bucket list of people we want to work with. But even compared to 5 years ago, every project now just seems a lot more satisfying than it was right when we were fresh out of school, when we were working a lot of odd jobs and just kind of working with people who's like, yeah, I guess we'll film that, but like I don't feel a personal connection to this like carpet company that I'm filming their commercial. Like,
Right.
I do feel a connection to like, whoever, like a Julius Eastman piece that we just like love and just want to like really want to get on camera. So yeah, things have definitely been really, really gratifying. I think it'll just continue to get even better moving forward.
Yeah. Talking about moving forward, what do you imagine the future looking like? If beyond just the future of your industry and you know, I guess maybe macro and micro, the future of this production industry that you're in, and maybe coming out of COVID with the ability to play live shows again with Square Peg. Where do you see all of this in a couple of years?
Yeah, so fortunately, I think COVID has definitely opened a lot of people's eyes to the importance of film, basically, in music. Obviously, because live performances weren't happening, a lot of orchestras and chamber ensembles and operas, they all kind of went to the camera to do things, because that was the only context they could. Excuse me. um, and so I think we've already started to see that people are just putting a little bit more weight into their film projects, and so I think there was always a bit of a gap between kind of like the the recital video style performance video and then like a pop music video. There was like a pretty large budget gap in there and just a large gap of the resources that people wanted to put into it. And our goal has always been trying to bring the classical musicians a little bit closer to that, like let's actually sink a lot of money and time and resources into music video. We've always been pushing for that, and I think we are starting to see that gap close a little bit. I think after a year and a half of not being able to play live, I think people are just interested in actually sinking some resources into making high quality videos. And so even in the last year, we've started to work with kind of higher profile clients who I don't think we would have before the pandemic, but I think they just started to realize that we're already doing that thing that everybody was now relying on, and so we've gotten more of that work. So I guess I'm excited to see, now that people have that bug in their ear, I'm excited to see some people continue to move forward and keep stressing the importance of film in contemporary music and percussion and all of our smaller worlds, our more niche worlds than the pop music world. And then on the Square Peg side, like obviously playing live was just a huge thing. I mean, we love playing live and we love shows and touring, and it was definitely a huge bummer to not be able to do that for so long. And we actually wrote and produced and mixed a whole full length album in that time of lockdown. And so I think in the immediate future, we're just really excited to get back in the same room and learn those songs together, which, we wrote in a very kind of disjointed, we were all kind of in our own places type of way. And now we can actually come together and play it in person. And yeah, there's just something, I mean, every musician knows this, but there's just something special about the energy between the audience and the performer. And when you're just playing for live streams, or, you're playing for Twitch or whatever it might be, it's just, you don't get the same energy back. And so we're pretty excited to get the touring, back up and running. And I think that'll just kind of bring these new songs to that next level of actually feeling what what people get out of them. And yeah, so pretty excited about that moving forward.
Yeah, it sounds like the future's really bright and on all fronts.
We can hope so. Yeah, try and stay optimistic.
Absolutely. So I just want to close with one final question. As somebody who has done a lot of self study and self learning, created a career path sort of very unique to you. Do you have any words of wisdom for other budding percussion entrepreneurs and people who maybe have aspirations that are beyond just the standard routes that we typically see in schools?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this kind of goes full circle to the what we were talking about at the beginning, which is just how organically these things grew that I did. I think that is why I feel pretty happy doing them, is because they weren't things that um, we kind of forced because we felt like we had to. I mean, in both the cases of Square Peg and 410, they were just things that we enjoyed doing, and basically like tried to start making them more and more legit to actually become a job and a career. And I think part of that is not feeling any shame of in needing other forms of income to do the thing that you enjoy doing. I think a mindset that I experienced a little bit as I was getting close to graduation was this kind of just like all or nothing, like I get a job in an orchestra or I fall on my face kind of attitude. And I just don't think that's healthy. And I think the reason why this band and the company I think have been able to succeed is that we were all pretty resilient and just like we can work odd jobs and we're okay with that, even if they're not related to music at all, just if it leaves us the time at the end of the day to actually do the thing that we really enjoy. So when Square Peg was in its kind of infancy post graduation, and when 410 was kind of starting to become a thing, all of us were very much doing very random jobs. I mean, like driving for Postmates and working at restaurants and filming weddings and really doing anything that we possibly could. And I think because of that, that just bought us a little more time to build up the company and the band in a way that we really wanted to. And even now, we still continue to have our kind of like side jobs to help fund the creative things. And I think when the proportion is kind of a little bit too far on the side of like my income has to be the one thing that I love in life and that's it, then I think that puts a lot of pressure if you don't achieve that thing. And I've seen some friends, kind of not get their dream gig or not get their dream job in an orchestra, and they basically just give up after that point, and they're just like, well, I guess that's not for me, and maybe I'll do something else. But instead, I think it's helpful to just kind of be a bit more open to the other things that you can potentially do to support yourself, even if they're unrelated to music at all, as long as they give you the time and the energy and the resources to do what you actually feel passionate about, which is, the more creative stuff. And so fortunately, I feel like the people in my band and company have kind of been able to find that balance of not depending so much on the like purely artistic creative side of things for our income and our livelihood. And so yeah, I think the if there's any wisdom, I don't know if I'm in a place to offer that, but I would recommend just trying to follow whatever it is that you feel very passionate about. But if that doesn't immediately make you tons of money, that's okay. Because, there are other things that you can do in the meantime. And there's no shame in doing something that's not related to music or whatever. I think it's like maybe a little embarrassing to like, talk to your private teacher in college and it's like, oh, what are you doing? It's like, well, I do this. That's, maybe not playing in an orchestra or whatever. And but I think trying to just be confident in that and be like, I'm doing that because I'm also doing this thing that I love that currently doesn't make me any money yet, but eventually it will. So that would be my piece of advice.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds just like living an authentic life, and I think you've really led that yourself. So you absolutely have the wisdom to offer, and even at your young age, really impressive. So where can people follow what you're doing with 410, with Square Peg?
Yeah, I guess we all have our respective websites, but honestly, I feel like Instagram might be the best place these days. I think the websites are generally kept up to date, but we all post on our Instagrams often, and 410 usually posts about our most recent projects on there, and SquarePeg will announce shows and recordings over there. So that's probably the best place is just to follow the Instagrams.
Excellent. All right. Well, Evan, thank you so much for taking the time to enlighten us about your career and everything that you've been up to. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great. Really appreciate it.